Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the Lasting Legacies podcast, where we have conversations of purpose, on purpose, in preparation of the perpetuation of a lasting legacy. I'm your host, Super Rio Grande, and I'm joined by my guest today, Brother Spann, and Mr. DQ himself. We'd like to thank you guys for coming on.
So, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Glad to be here.
Yes, this episode is brought to you by Dixon Innovations. Please call him for any of your automotive or residential tent needs. His number is 601-918-5678. Again, if it's residential or it's automotive, he will get you taken care of. So, not to further ado, let's dive into this episode. So, basically, this episode was inspired, one, by Northwest Rankin winning the 6A basketball championship. Congratulations to them. So we like to say that.
Congratulations.
And basically, the title of this episode is going to be Championing the Cause, because we do have champions, but there's a cause that needs to be discussed. And going right into it, we want to talk to Brother Spann because he had some very choice words he wanted to share about what he thought should be happening in the community. So what we do here is we want to have a platform that discuss how we move forward as people. So with that being said, we want an opportunity to Jeremy to plainly explain what he meant by what he said and give any details he should like to give, so we know how we need to move forward, make adjustments, and perpetuate this lasting legacy for our children to come. So Jeremy, you got the floor.
Yeah, so I think in to try to compress it into as much of a nutshell as possible, the children that played in, as well as the children that won the championship, both live in cities that the Parks and Recreations haven't supplied basketball goals. So we're talking about top tier children. We're talking about state champions. So they plowed through everybody in the state, and these are neighboring cities. Mm-hmm. And the quiet talk or the secretive talk has been, Brandon and Flowood don't have goals. And I because I try to be as solution based as possible now that I'm up in age, I realize crying don't get you nothing.
Correct.
After you cry, you still got work to do.
That's
so
right.
We're now at 45. We're gonna get past the crying. We're gonna get past the emotional aspect about things. And I was like, well, we don't have to have Brandon or Flowood's basketball goals. We have goals in the communities in which these babies come from, and those basketball goals aren't being utilized. If it were the basketball goals, or more specifically, the family life centers. Mm-hmm. Now, based on the current culture of the youth, with them being not busy, for lack of better words. They have a lot of time on their hands, because you got some 40-year-olds that are working starter jobs at McDonald's and Burger King. You got 40-year-olds working these jobs. They're not giving up hours for these incoming 16-year-olds to learn a work ethic.
Absolutely.
Right. So if the African-American church brings in more money on a Sunday than the average corporation does in a week, why aren't we employing the children of the community, or employing the resources that we have to draw in the children? Because I don't want to sound cliche and say that the children are our future, but
that's a really good point, because I grew up in a time, and because we got a couple of issues going on. I grew up in a time mm-hmm. where we did play ball at the Brandon Park on Sundays. So at some point in time, though, a decision was made to remove the rims
100%
from the goals. So what we have to realize is, okay, number one is, why were the rims removed?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. In our, for our youth, for our children. And then number two is, we have to look at, okay, well, the rims are gone. They've been gone for several years. I think they even turned it into tennis courts now. Mm-hmm. So now we have to say, okay, let's look at our resources, because it's going to be up for us to determine the interests for our children in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In the interest of talking about communities, let's let's not isolate it. I don't want people to think that I'm isolating all of this just to a certain diaspora, because Puckett is a community of Rankin County, and Puckett says, let's say Puckett says, well, we don't get the same amenities that Brandon gets, and so Puckett says, well, what we'll do, we'll create a community within the Rankin County spread, and we'll become self-sufficient. So hopefully, when Rankin County calls on us, we'll have some resources that Rankin County, and that it's in the fairness of it all. I'm saying once our community becomes self-sufficient, then you can become better, more productive members of the community. So understandably, we have to evolve to the times that's going on, but we don't get there until we start using our own resources, until we start recognizing what a resource is. Because truth be told, it's not solely just basketball. You can use the Family Life Center for, if you want to if young ladies are not dressing how you want young ladies to dress now, say, okay, we're gonna teach y'all how to sew, and we're gonna, at the end of the 4-week course of teaching y'all how to sew, we're gonna have a fashion show, and we're gonna do it in the Family Life Center. Mm-hmm. Now you bring the boys in for basketball, you bring the girls in, but in between the time while she's pushing that fabric through that sewing machine, like, okay, well, this is how you dress in corporate America. This is how you dress whenever you go to a dinner party. You can dress like this, and we know that most of y'all are wearing shorts that are this short, but this is the tension that comes along with that. If you wear that, now we're not judging you. That's what you want to wear, that's fine, but understand that this is what happens when you wear this.
And understandably, to relate to what you're saying, so we have to begin to invest in our youth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a nucleus that's a center, that's a platform for all of us to engage in our youth.
Right, because one of the things that I did hear someone come in and say, well, Brandon and Flowood, they should put the basketball goals back up. Mm-hmm. Which, okay, that is an option, but the way we look at it now is we have to take the responsibility to invest in our youth, because when we invest in our youth, we can determine their best interests.
Absolutely.
We can place the value on them at that point instead of allowing a society to place the value on our own youth. Yep. So what you get is, when we don't invest in our young people get to go out in a world that does not have them in their best interest.
Absolutely not.
So at that point, the world determines our young people's value. We should determine their value from within the community.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So here's where I get my question from, because you hit on it, Family Life Center. So what symbol has the Family Life Center been in the black church community? Because when I think Family Life Center, there's probably 3 events that come to mind. Vacation Bible School, funeral repast, and if there's another one out there somewhere I'm missing. So for you to have such good ideas to incorporate a Family Life Center, why are those things not happening in the Family Life Center? Look at the term in the title, Family Life Center. You just said it yourself, DQ. We have to invest into our children. So what is the problem with that? Why are you getting pushed back from wanting to invest into the kids who are our future? We don't have Randy Watson up here singing that song From the West Going Down episode of That's My Mama. We know that. Right. But why did we get pushed back from investments?
Bro, that's the question of all questions. Because eventually, I don't want us to get to the point where we're talking about and battling or we're investing in products of the problem. We have to go to the problem. And so if you have leadership that makes it hard, that sets up roadblocks, if you have to court, if you have to kiss the ring, if you got to bend the knee, if it's that type of ego that's over these Family Life Centers that are driving people from asking to utilize it, or not asking, because I don't think a community should have to ask to use what it built. And I was told to correct my tone in terms of or to try to find different wording as opposed to saying the community built it, because the sentiment was there were certain families that made that happen. And my question at that time, because it struck me, my question at that time was, what does it matter? What does it matter?
Good point. Because what we have to look at is essentially our young people. That's the interest.
Yeah.
The best interest of our young people. And if we're not moving in a way that's examining that interest, then at that point, those individuals need to examine themselves.
100%.
Because what we have to understand is the Family Life Center was put there to be a resource for the families, for the children, for the community. And that's not being done in a lot of places.
The manner in which we talk in this shop, whenever there's the guys in here, and it's understood, everybody throws in, but I always say, I'm about to muddy up the water, because I don't like clean water.
Facts, every time.
So my thing is, the leadership has to be removed. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firm believer in it, and I may even get more pushback, and I'll be more specific. Leadership is our community's problem, because that leadership is sitting high up on its perch, and it's created a cocoon around itself that allows or puts itself in a position to where it can't be approached. It is beyond reproach or beyond conversation. It's beyond criticism. It's beyond a whole lot. The leadership has created such a safe cocoon around itself. And I'll give you the mindset behind leadership. Maybe or maybe not, they may have lost position at their job. They may have lost positioning in society. They may be losing positioning in their home. So when they rest securely in these roles in church, and they take it so seriously that everybody's got to come to me, and everybody's got to kiss ring, everybody got to make me feel better to get what it is that I'm over.
And that's a good point. And I think it's so deep simply because we have to look into the psychology of the black man.
We have to.
And as a black man, throughout history, the black man has been oppressed.
100%.
So when we do get to positions of authority or positions of power, we misuse it.
Yeah.
Simply because we're not used to it.
Right.
And so what happens now is it's time for the younger generations to start standing up and demanding the accountability from the current leadership. And if the current leadership isn't there and willing to go forth with the agenda at hand, then it's time for the younger generations to stand up and take a stand to push the agenda.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and if you speak on leadership from a biblical standpoint, you can talk about Moses and Joshua. Mm-hmm. So if we have a Moses and Joshua situation, Moses prepared Joshua.
Right.
So one, obviously, if leadership is failing, we're not preparing the next generation. Mm-hmm. And two, based on what we're talking about, there's no generation to prepare because they're not present. You have to be present for preparation. Yeah. So with that being said, I just don't understand how anybody can rest in a position where their legacy, which we talk about, is based on the progression from their leadership.
Complacency. And the reason I say complacency is because depending on what type of leadership that you have at these particular churches, depending on what type of leadership it is in their agenda, If you're ministering over people that you want to be sheeps, then what'll end up happening is you'll teach these people. We'll just pray about it. He's secretly saying, I know I don't have any answers, and I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I don't even want to make myself uncomfortable. But what I want to do is get you to get off my case. So we're going to pray about it. And for the last 55 years, since the death of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. We're in a place where we don't want to be uncomfortable, and if we can get to the point where we can just pay for the hard work to get done, or we can just go to the church and we can just tithe, and we're gonna leave it for somebody to just pray for it, and if it happens, and then I'm gonna be grateful. But if it doesn't, I'm gonna just say that God works in mysterious ways. But I ain't finna put forth no effort. I'm not about to be uncomfortable. I'm not about to change my discipline. I'm not about to soul search and see what it is that I've done to cause my problem. Because it's easy to blame somebody else. And I think that's what a lot of these leadership, these kids, they got their phones and they don't listen and walk around with their pants sagging and they don't do nothing but complain. But they don't provide solutions. And for anybody that's willing to talk about a problem for 10, 15 years, and you're not exacting any energy to talk about a solution, I can't talk to you.
Well, that's a great point, because you can look at the last 20 plus years to see why we are where we are now with our young black men, simply because the leadership that may have been present at that particular time maybe didn't want to get uncomfortable to address some of those issues, because now we got to completely just start over with our young men. Mm-hmm. For one, they're going to prison and they're being murdered. I mean, as far as a young black male in the U.S. today, I mean, it's a 40% chance that they're going to die by homicide.
Yeah.
And so, so one of the things that we have to do is we have to utilize these resources for their interest, because, like you said, they are the future. And at my church, I am one of the youth directors. I'm also one of the youngest deacon that's there in the church. And my generation, we have to start standing up. Yeah. Because it's on us now. It's completely on us now.
When I graduated in '95, Dogwood wasn't there. Walmart wasn't there. To a certain extent, you didn't see anything until you got to the movie theaters or the Mirror Lake Plaza. And it took we're almost at the precipice of, we're almost at 30 years from '95.
Right. So
that means that in the next 20 years, in order for us to stop the bleeding and repair young black men, the time is now.
Right. Exactly. It's right now.
With it being that imperative, I don't give 3 or 1 sugar honey iced tea about some grown man's hurt feelings right now. I don't care. And if a man takes time out of his day to call me to tell me how his feelings are hurt, or if he's giving me any conversation or dialogue about something dealing with emotions, I'll put it out on the airway right now. He can keep his phone call.
And the thing about it, for me, my feelings are hurt because I'll even, and part of being a man is standing up and accepting responsibility.
Right.
And so for the longest, I have, turned my head to certain things that I saw young men doing. Man, somebody need to get these boys in line. Somebody, when you keep looking around for somebody, at some point, you somebody.
Right, exactly, absolutely.
Yeah.
So my question, I have 2 questions. Really, the first question, you mentioned that you are one of the youngest deacons, if not the youngest deacon in your church. So, one, out of curiosity, were you approached as far as being a deacon there, or is that something that you felt led to do so? And also, what challenges have you run into being, the youngest? Because we know challenges come from age gaps. Challenges come from tradition versus truth. What are some things you run into? First, tell us, how it came about, if you like to, and also what challenges have you run into with that? Because I honestly think in leadership, sometimes people are recruited as a fresh face or as a, something that somebody young enough to bridge the gap. But at the same time, when the gap begins to be bridged, then all the, it's almost like when you fix a car with an issue. You fix the water pump, then you find out that the radiator got a hole in it. You fix the radiator, then you find out the reservoir is leaking. And then you fix the reservoir, you find out the belt that turns the water pump is there. So tell me your experience with that as far as leadership, because if leadership is the issue, we have to address it, and we have to figure out where do we start. Because I will say this, we talked about Family Life Center, we've talked about as far as, being that person, being that somebody. Us as a community, we have to produce good citizens. And what happens is, if we continue to turn our eyes or turn our heads away from what's going on, whether that be directly or indirectly, just doing it because these issues start rolling up on our back doorstep. And that's where we have to produce good citizens. We have to produce upstanding men, upstanding women. The world ain't gonna do it.
Right.
The world's gonna chew them up and spit them out. And we talk about this all the time, Jeremy. You talk about borrowed lesson versus bought lesson. In 95, you could buy a lesson because it wasn't expensive.
Right.
You buy a lesson today, it may cost you life. You can't do it. So going back to you, DQ, tell us about, you evolving into the deacon role, you being the youngest, and was it a recruitment? Was it something that you were led by the Spirit to do? And how you've been able to maneuver that in making the change and difference?
Well, one of the things with me was I look at, within all men, we have character, and our character will lead outwardly.
Yes.
And so I had got to a point to where my character, I was reevaluating my character, becoming a man. I have two small children, a wife. I have a couple of businesses in the community, and so my character was leading outward, even though I may not have recognized it or realized it at that particular time. Others did. And so by others recognizing and seeing the character that the way I led my family, the way that I led in the community with my businesses and things like that, they saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. But I had to, at that particular point, examine, say, hey, I know I've made mistakes.
Yes.
But it's time for me to rise above all that and step into the role of being a leader. Yeah. And step into that. And that's what I did at that particular time. And, of course, it was, we can be comfortable or we can step into our calling.
Absolutely.
And so I didn't want to, but I knew that it was something that I was going to have to do for the sake of my kids and my family and for myself. And so, and you mentioned as far as some of the pushback, honestly, I haven't received any pushback. I think our older, at my particular church, our older, more seasoned deacons and older seasoned membership, they're looking for a fresh start.
Right.
They're looking for someone to come and carry the load and to bear the weight, because they're no longer able to, pull the weight like they used to.
Agreed.
And so they're actually, from my perspective, they're actually waiting on younger men to step up and accept the challenge. And that's what I did. I stepped up and I accepted the challenge. And then another challenge was, of course, taking that influence and taking that responsibility to direct it in another department of the church, which is working with the youth.
Right.
And so since we have done that, we have received so many compliments. I mean, we've had new members join our church simply because of the youth ministry and what we're trying to do for the youth, because we're bringing in those new innovative ideas. And that's what I think a lot of people, some people are not accepted to change, but I think at my church at that particular time, they're ready for the change because they can see the growth. And that's what we live on as far as keeping the children at the center of the agenda. And I'm not afraid to speak out and say, this is what I think, or this is what I believe. Of course, most black churches, you have a lot of traditions and things like that.
Correct.
But then also, you just have to be able to understand that, hey, everybody may not accept, but we can at least agree to disagree.
Yes.
And that's one thing. I'm acceptive, and I look to the seasoned individuals, the seasoned deacon, for that wisdom.
Yeah.
Help give me some guidance. and I'll take it, and I'll pull the weight, and so that's kind of my experience with that.
So the grand question, one of the main reasons we have this episode, what Jeremy has shared with us through his 2 posts, how can that be taken, driven, and engineered into what you're trying to accomplish with your youth ministry? How does it come together? Because we can talk about the packaging, we can talk about the delivery, we can talk about what words were used, but we're here on one accord to basically say this is all about the children.
Right.
So basically, from what he said, what he interjected, and what he was inspired to share, how from right here can that translate over to your youth ministry? How could that be incorporated? Because it's all about solutions. Again, feelings don't fix anything. If your car breaks down, you can be upset. It's still broke. So what do? We call the tow truck. We get it in the shop. We get it diagnosed. We get the mechanic on. We get it fixed.
Right.
So at the same time, from what he has, from what you're doing, how does it come together? How does it grow legs? Because one thing about church I've learned in the past, everybody has great ideas, they just don't put the legs on. Everybody wants to be, do good things, they don't put the legs on. Or everybody wants to be a good person, but they don't put legs on the things. That's just like the Bible. Nobody puts legs on the Bible, and it needs to walk. Because in order to do what it needs to do, it has to be shown. So again, the question, how do we take his idea, his vision, his what would we call it, his call to action, incorporated to a youth ministry such as yours, and how can that be done across the county?
Well, I think first of all, I would like to commend Brother Spann on standing up and saying something, because it needed to be said.
Right.
We're at a time where, we've gotten comfortable. We got good jobs now. We living good now. What is it, a 2-bedroom apartment in a deluxe?
Yeah, deluxe apartment in the sky.
Deluxe apartment in the sky.
East side.
Yes, sir.
On the east side. So as black people, we can get we can't get comfortable with where we are. But it's so much more that need to be done, and Brother Spann, he spoke on quite a bit when he made the video, and when he came back the second time, addressing some of the leadership. I think it started then, because whenever you get pushback, you're starting to see some progression.
Correct.
Because people are not going to say anything as long as nothing's going on.
And I think. As people that know me, I think everybody that knows me personally understands that I've already factored in the pushback. I've already factored in the fact that, because if we're looking in the grand scheme of things, any revolution that's ever been won, there's been some bloodshed, which means that things have been uncomfortable. There's some, like just a moment ago, you mentioned that. Taking inventory of yourself, you knew, okay, most great leaders are always reluctant. The greatest leaders are always the ones that are the most reluctant. And so understandably, when you recognize there's a void, it's just, if we start incorporating the manner in which how we do business, and the structure of business, and we take that and we structure our families like we would a business, and we structure our social lives like we would a business. There are some people that are not going to be with this company for long. There's some people that you just need some temporary help with, and they'll segue you to the next venture. But then you also need the good ideas. And as soon as an older person is not producing any good ideas, or they ain't bringing in no good numbers, you got to move them out. Because the intention is to make sure that the company stays employing people. So if we're looking at it if we're looking at what it is that we got going on from a corporate perspective, if I have to be the street, if this was a rap team, if I got to be the one that's out putting up posters on the light poles and handing out flyers and the whole nine, and you got to be somewhere where you're talking to the DJs trying to get his record played. We need you writing lyrics, getting better. I'm the street team, you the A&R, and you the artist. So in order to, and this is what we always talk about in the shop, it's like NASCAR. If he's the driver, I'm the wheel guy. I got the pit crew over here. Mm-hmm. If you the motor guy, we don't have nothing to talk to you about except for how hard hitting is that motor, because we're gonna need to know what type of glue we need to put on the wheels and the rubber and the whole nine. And the only thing that y'all need to talk about is you need to tell him how hard hitting that motor is, so he'll know how to adjust in the curves. The objective is to get the car across the line first. Mm-hmm. I got to pay attention and only focus on my job. You got to pay attention. You got to learn what the new motors are. You ain't got time to be over here talking about, man, y'all, what type of air pumps y'all got connected to your wrenches? Man, you don't need to know nothing about that. You go do motor stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
The objective is to get the car across the line. The objective is to make sure that our children, once they leave our care and they go into the world, they are equipped with the capability of thinking, rational thinking. They're equipped with a work ethic. They're equipped with all of the things that you need to be a productive member of the society.
Correct. And I go back to that, not to cut you off, Jeremy.
No.
We have to produce good citizens. We have to reproduce good citizens. Mm-hmm. And from us being three black gentlemen, mm-hmm. until we speak, until we have intelligent conversations, we're always perceived to be in the negative.
Yeah,
that's just the reality.
Exactly,
we understand that. Yeah. We have white friends, we have white counterparts. We don't hate white people. That's not what we're saying. But if we couldn't speak and we just approached you, there's automatically a characterization of us based on how we look. Yeah. So going back to, we have to reproduce good citizens, and that starts from your family life center. It starts from your youth program. It starts from understanding your history. Mm-hmm. Understanding where we come from.
And what we have to look at too is, and like I mentioned before, is we can't assume that society is going to help us push our agenda forward for our children.
We can assume they won't.
Exactly.
Right. It's safer to do that.
So what we have to do, and what we've done in our youth ministry, is to make sure that we're bringing those issues to our children. We're talking to them about things that they need to prepare for. And so that's one thing that we have to do with our kids. We have to invest in them that way. Simply what happens in the black communities is it gets to a point to where there's no opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so the reason that there's no opportunity is because every time these children come through, you may be teaching them, they go off, they go to college, they go somewhere else. We have to instill in them the importance of them coming back and investing into that community.
Correct.
Because it depletes the community. Everyone that comes through, like it's like everyone that comes through takes something but never brings anything back. It will deplete the community, and we're at a point now where the community is being depleted.
We are.
And we have to make sure that we're bringing the type of programs that's going to teach these young people to come back and replenish. Mm-hmm. Bring back what you took.
But that's our culture, though. Unfortunately, we are the number one consumers.
We are.
Yeah. We don't produce anything.
Well, we're not to cut you off, but the point that I'm about to make ties in, it marries the two. We're in a position where, because I said just a minute ago, the intake that the African American church takes in, it's the Sunday is the most profitable time. So that means that churches are bringing in more money than people are spending in any other area of the economy. Which means that if we had innovative ideas and say, okay, well, the church is no longer going to pay for anybody to care for the lawn. We're going to go out and buy a zero turn, a push mower, and 4 weed eaters. And we're going to make sure that we spend, after we've paid after we've stopped paying for somebody to maintenance our area, we're gonna say, okay, we need some young men, regardless of whether or not they want to or not. We're gonna train you how to mow this lawn. We're gonna teach you why we're training you to do this, because we're giving you a skill set, and you may not want to do it. But your father, I've already talked to your father. He knows that, I'm gonna be patient with you because I know that you don't want to do it. But also, in a minute, once you get good or mowing around here, we're gonna go down the street to Miss Ella's house, and she's 97 and she ain't got no family around here. We're gonna maintain her yard too.
Right.
And we start doing things like that because the amount of money that we're bringing into these churches, we can employ ourselves. We can teach work ethic. We can teach economics. We can teach all of the stuff that we're going to need to be productive members of society. And we can probably eventually one day teach other small business owners, because America would have us to think, our forefathers would have us to think, work hard and save your money. You work hard and save your money till something breaks, and then you're back on the hamster wheel and back to going from check to check. But if we can teach our children to get paid per service or per job, now you said, okay, well, now that you got this money, you've amassed this, you've gotten paid $200 for 30 minutes worth of work. Now let me teach you how to go open up your checking account. Let me teach you how to open up, do an LLC. Let me teach you all the stuff that the world does not want you to know, and that's economics and finance.
And kind of along the lines of what you're talking about, basically mentorship.
Yes.
Where we're mentoring our young people, because you can go in any black church now, you're going to have lawyers in there, you're going to have doctors, you're going to have business owners, you're going to have some of everybody in there, because we have gotten to a point now where we're able to pursue higher education and things of that nature. So we're much more successful than they were 50 years ago. And so we have the resources.
But we to a certain extent, this is where the water gets muddy again. We almost got too many black churches. And the reason that we got too many black churches is because somebody got their feelings hurt at the last church and went and started another one. So before we even get to where it is that we're headed to with this particular conversation, we need to take an inventory again and say, how do we fix emotional men? Because that's the reason that most women don't have respect for African American men nowadays, because they acting like them. They're super sensitive. And if I don't get my way, I'm gonna go down here and I'm a huff and puff. And you have Masonic orders based off of the fact that somebody got mad there, and they said, we're gonna go down here and create our own lodge. And you got that's what it's. We have to stop the bleeding there, because if you got 4 black churches in one community, now ain't no money going, because now everybody competing against each other. But ain't nobody saying, okay, well, we're gonna take these 4 black churches and condense it down to one, because this is entirely too much. And we can take some of the money that we're pulling in, and we can redistribute it out to our community. We're just gonna have to get past, because back in the day when we was younger, our grandfathers, gentlemen our age, that means that we got to go past our mothers and fathers. We got to go back to our grandfather's generation. Those men, I've seen when I was staying at my grandmother's house when we come back from Germany, there were 3 or 4 different people that stayed at my grandmother and grandfather's house when times got bad for them, and they were people from other families. And my grandfather was one of the most standoffish, no BS. Said he shot straight from the hip and said what was on his mind, and nobody questioned it. But I could tell that he was probably the most compassionate person on that street as well, based on the fact that when nobody had nothing, they came to my granddad. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So they knew, well, he gonna put me up, but I'm gonna have to work. I'm gonna have to get on top of that pulpwood truck. He gonna put some money in my pocket. He don't care whether or not I go off and do some drinking or some smoke. He ain't finna get me out of no trouble. But I got to step up, because if he's giving me this help, that's the only thing that he was asking in return. Well, get yourself together. You can land here, but you can't stay here. So.
Well, one of the things that our, youth really need to see is when they see that other people believe in them, they tend to take the responsibility. They tend to excel in school. One of the things that we see in a lot of our young black boys, the reason that they're so garnered towards sports and athletics is because that's one of the arenas where they're told that they're actually good in something.
Correct.
So what happens is they're getting affirmed. That's why they excel in sports.
Exactly.
But we need the same thing with their intellect, with their character. We need to embed those things into them. And so we need to embed those things into our young black boys to let them know, hey, I see a doctor in you. I see a lawyer in you. I see a business owner in you. But to do that, we have to make the investment.
We do.
And the investment comes in more than one way. Of course, your money is one investment. 2, your time.
Yes.
And 3, your influence. And so you have to use all of that to invest in our young people today, simply because that's the only place. That's why we had 2, Northwest Rankin and Brandon, in the state championship, because in those teams are, and I'll get to that too, the basketball programs at the schools in Rankin County are going to be 99% black programs. Those programs don't even get the support that they should get compared to the football teams.
Correct.
So we're dealing with the point to where there are limited resources, not only in the community, but also in the school.
Exactly.
Because one of the things that helps the basketball program is the booster club.
Right.
And so what we have to look at too is who's playing on the team versus how much disposable resources do those family even have to continue to push towards the basketball program. So that program, and it could be different today. When I was coming up, that's how it was. So
there's a little change.
So that's where we begin to be at. We have to understand that it's going to take that investment.
It is.
To get these young people to where they need to be, and we have to be willing to make the investment.
I think we should start doing like some breakfasts and some dinners and some dressing up, and because nowadays, I mean, it would feel. Coach Prime said, when you dress better, you perform better. So if we can be in a position where we're taking these boys out and saying, well, look, here, put this suit on. Let me show you how to put the suit on, and let me show you how to put some cufflinks on. Let me show you how good you're going to feel when people are complimenting you based off of how you dress and your presentation. And so the involvement is like, I had breakfast with my 9-year-old this morning. Just me and him sitting in the room, and we were talking, and he was chatty. And I let him talk, and it's I kiss, embrace, and affirm my boys because I know what it does to the psyche. Because it's like, and I tell my boys are super smart, and they are like generally like Ian graduated from Pearl with a 3.8, and first year in college. Chemistry is kicking his butt, and he still got a 3.7. Dean's List, and I tell them how beautiful they are now. I'm proud of them.
And that's a good point, because you're fostering that environment for them, and as a community, we have to foster that environment because all the kids aren't getting that at home. So that's why, as he said, that's why it's so important for us to utilize these family life centers so we can foster those environments for our children in the community. Because you have to get to a point to where, your kids are good. 3.8, they're good. But it's going to be several out there that's not getting that.
Yeah.
So we have to get beyond our selfishness of saying, well, my kid's good, But I was telling my son, he wants to do all this crazy stuff with his hair now. He's at that age. And so I was telling my son, I said, look, son, I'm going to take you to the barbershop. we cutting that hair down. We gonna line it up, make it look nice, because you're perceived simply because the way you look.
Absolutely. And that has to be taught. And that's where we're missing the mark as a community. We're not teaching how the world sees us.
Men are taught to suffer silently, and because we're taught to suffer silently, the three of us can be in here going through the same thing and
not say nothing.
Not say nothing. And where's the logic in, if I can help you out and say, well, look, I've been through that before. Even if I can't fix your problem, here, write this number down. This is going to bypass 4 conversations that you got to have. This is going to put you right on the desk with the person that you need to talk to. And if you come in and you're like, well, yeah, before you do that, make sure you have this, and this. And because I went through that, I went through something similar to that. We don't have to. We've been engineered to suffer silently. Coming out of slavery. I mean, don't tell nobody nothing. I mean, think about if you work with somebody in a factory, you work next to them, not telling them about how much it is that you make and how much it is that they make. And there's a $20 discrepancy there. All because y'all being quiet and ain't telling each other anything. When in all actuality, the business needs y'all more than y'all need the business.
Right.
But we don't communicate. We have to get to the point to where we get past the suffer silently mindset. But I think a lot of the suffer silent mindset is only in the black community.
It is. I mean, if anybody thinks it's different, that's fine. We can have a discussion about it. But it's evident. So one thing what you hear is another thing what you see. Yeah. It's evident. We suffer silently.
We have to revamp African American thinking.
We have to. And what we have to do also from a leadership standpoint, we'll get to some closing remarks. First thing we got to do, especially in our communities, we have to be transparent. In order to impact the people, the citizens that we're creating, we have to admit the mistakes we've made.
Right.
I think a lot of our problem is we're jealous to a degree, and I'm not speaking on us, but as a people, we can be jealous if somebody doesn't make the same mistake we make and gets further in life than we did. But in all actuality, that's why we're there. If we're not creating the citizenship, if we're not creating the good character by explaining, hey, this, we can say why you shouldn't, have sex before marriage or do drugs all we want to. But if you have a concrete story as to, hey, this is what he did, and this is what they're not telling you. That's all. It's all like the whole hood persona with the clothes and jewelry and drugs and all this stuff like that. It's all cool till you go to jail.
Well, and then too, I always say we have to be louder than those distractions.
We do.
Because those, that lifestyle is pushing an agenda on our youth.
Absolutely.
Whether or not if we know it or not. And those individuals are being compensated highly to push that agenda.
Yes.
So what we have to understand is, our young people need to know what the real part of this is. These people getting millions of dollars to talk about they doing this and they doing that. Now you want to go and live that because it looks cool. But the reality of it is that's an agenda. So we have to get to the point in our community to where we're pushing our own agenda. We need you to go to school, get a good education. We need you to pull your pants up. We need you to learn how, our young black men, to learn how to deal with conflict. Because everybody is not going to like you, and you can't pull out a gun and shoot your way out of everything.
There you go.
So that's what we have. As my brother mentioned earlier, black men suffer silently. Young man the other day killed his wife, burnt her car up, and threw her body in the river. Simply because there's something there that he did not know how to deal with.
Correct.
And so we have these problems with our young black males, and we're young black men are targeted. They're targeted by everything. The weight, only other black men will understand the weight that a black man is under.
That's it.
So if you're not a black man, you cannot 100%. Tell me what I'm going through, what I'm dealing with, because we all deal with these things differently. Correct. Even black women, they have a different struggle than black men. Black boys got a different struggle than black girls. So we have to get to a point to where we can start addressing these issues and having these conversations in rooms that we own rooms that we supply the resources to, rooms where we are standing up in, teaching these young people. We have to do that. We can't expect anybody else to go out and do those things. We have to take control, and we have to bring our resources and bring everything we got, even the kitchen sink, throw it all in for our young black people.
That's it. So, closing remarks. Jeremy, do you have anything else you want to discuss on the matter at hand? Do you have any comments you'd like to make or any more sentiments you'd like to put out there? Because from this point, we're solution oriented.
Right.
We're taking on all solutions. Have anything you want to share?
This will probably be one of the last times that I address any pushback, because the addressing and giving attention to pushback takes away time from a solution-based mindset.
Yes.
And
exactly right.
And my call to action now is the intentions of taking inventory. We have to take an inventory of ourselves, take an inventory of the people that are providing information to us. We're taking inventory of everything from the ground up, from the bottom of my feet to the top of my head. I'm taking inventory. I'm taking inventory of anybody that is in the way, anybody that's helping me, anybody that's everything. Everything has to be looked at differently now, because if the average lifespan is 70 years, if you're past 35, you're on the way down.
Yep. You're halfway there.
And so I'm 45. I got 10 years of making up. And so, understandably, everything is for the next move from here on out in my life.
Gotcha. DQ, will you have some closing remarks?
Yeah, one thing I would like to do is just give a call to action to our young men from 30 to 50. Our men ages 30 to 50. There is a time, and the time is now, that we need to stand up as men, because we are losing our younger generations, because we're not teaching them, we're not showing them, we're not directing them, we're not guiding them. So every black man from the ages of 30 to 50, you need to start evaluating what your contribution to the next generation is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Spot on.
Yeah.
So, and from Neil and Clark, again, Tears from Heaven is in stores right now, Amazon.com. Link will be below. Also, email addresses will be below. If you have any ideas that you would like to share, if you'd like to participate in this, I would like to say as an ending note, we've heard the word change. More or less about evolution. Things have to evolve. Things get better. If we haven't evolved from, the airplanes we had before, we have more, if not the same number of tragic incidents we have now. There's been evolution. So evolution is required. So that being said, we're here for solutions. This has been a great episode. Like I said, drop any notes you have below in the email link that you'll see. Also, we want, just ideas. We're beyond the complaints. We're beyond the pushback. What are the ideas? Because we have to continue to produce these outstanding citizens that will be in our place moving forward.
Absolutely.
So, from the Lasting Legacy podcast, remember, make your legacy last. How will you want that to be perpetuated? Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did nothing.